Right now, you are almost certainly not on anyone's menu. No animal on Earth is stalking you through the grass, waiting for the right moment to strike. It is not normal. For most of the time our ancestors have existed, they were prey, not occasionally, constantly. And the identity of their biggest killer is not what most people guess. Ask someone what animal killed the most ancient humans, and you'll usually get the same answers. Lions, tigers, maybe a saber-toothed cat if they've seen a documentary. The truth is stranger and honestly more disturbing because the deadliest killer in the fossil record isn't the biggest animal at all. Let's start at the bottom of the list and work our way up because the order itself tells you something important about how vulnerable our ancestors really were. Crocodiles make an appearance early in the story. Millions of years ago in East Africa, early hominins needed water constantly, and water meant rivers, and rivers meant crocodiles. Skeletal remains with crocodile-style puncture wounds have turned up at multiple fossil sites, evidence of ambushes at the water's edge, exactly the kind of attack crocodiles still carry out on animals today. It's a real cause of death, but it's limited to one specific location, the water. Step away from the riverbank, and the threat disappears. Hyenas are next, and they were a much more constant menace. Bone assemblages found in ancient caves across Africa show heavy chew marks matching hyena jaws, sometimes mixed in with hominin remains. Hyenas hunt in packs and will absolutely go after something as small and slow as an early hominin, especially the young, the old, or the injured. But hyenas mostly work the fringes, picking off the weak. Then there's one of the strangest confirmed predators of all, and it doesn't have 4 legs. In 1924, at a site called Taung in South Africa, researchers uncovered the skull of a young Australopithecus africanus, nicknamed the Taung Child, dating back roughly 2.8 million years. The skull had strange puncture marks and scratches that puzzled scientists for decades. Eventually, the pattern was matched to something specific, the talons of a large bird of prey, likely an eagle. This child had been snatched from the ground, carried into the air, and eaten. Giant eagles capable of taking down monkey-sized prey were common in that era, and the Taung Child skull is the calling card of exactly that kind of death. Now, here's where the list gets genuinely brutal, because the biggest, most obvious predators were involved too, just not in the way you'd expect. Big cats, like ancient lions and saber-toothed species, absolutely killed hominids, but their attacks tend to leave less clean evidence, because a lion kill often means the whole body gets consumed or scattered, leaving nothing precise enough to trace back with certainty. They just didn't leave behind the smoking gun. That smoking gun belongs to something much smaller and much sneakier than a lion. In the 1970s, a paleontologist named Bob Brain was examining fossils from Swart Cran's cave in South Africa when he came across a skull fragment cataloged as SK54. It belonged to Paranthropus robustus, a close hominin cousin, and it had 2 puncture marks at the back of the head. Brain matched the spacing and shape of those punctures to the lower canine teeth of an ancient leopard. The bite pattern suggested the leopard had clamped onto the skull and dragged the body away, exactly the way leopards drag their kills today into trees or caves to eat in private. This single fossil rewrote how scientists thought about human origins. For decades, the assumption had been that early hominins were the hunters, dominant, aggressive, at the top of their world. Our ancestors weren't the predator in this relationship. They were the meal. Leopards are ambush hunters built for stalking silently and striking in a single decisive burst, exactly the hunting style that works best against a slow, tree-dwelling primate with limited weapons. Leopards today still specialize in hunting baboons, and recent research using AI-assisted bite mark analysis on fossils from multiple African sites has confirmed patterns showed up again and again across different hominin populations and different time periods. They were a constant generational predator, quietly picking off hominins for millions of years, leaving just enough bite-marked bone behind for us to eventually notice the pattern. So, if you had to bet on a single animal responsible for the most ancient human deaths across deep time, the leopard has the strongest, most repeated fossil evidence of any confirmed predator. But here's the twist that changes the whole picture, and it comes from a completely different kind of evidence. Anthropologists have spent decades studying modern hunter-gatherer groups, communities like the Hadza in Tanzania, the Juhwanzi in the Kalahari, and the Hiwi in Venezuela. groups whose lifestyles still resemble in many ways how humans lived for most of history. Researchers tracked actual causes of death across these populations, and the results are almost the opposite of what the fossil record from millions of years ago would suggest. Among the Hadza, one detailed mortality study found that snake bites accounted for a tiny fraction of all deaths, just a fraction of 1%. Among the Hiwi, despite living in an environment full of jaguars, anacondas, and crocodile-like caimans, researchers recorded 0 confirmed deaths from predator attacks during their entire study period. 0. In these communities, the real killers were disease, accounting for anywhere from 20 to 85% of deaths depending on the group, and violence from other humans, which caused more than half of all deaths in some populations. Which means the honest answer to what killed the most ancient humans depends entirely on which chapter of ancient you're asking about. Millions of years ago, when hominins were small, slow, mostly unarmed, and still climbing trees at night to stay safe, leopards were very likely the single deadliest predator our lineage ever faced, patient, silent, and devastatingly effective. But by the time you reach the more recent hunter-gatherer societies, anthropologists have actually been able to study directly. The wild animals fade almost entirely into the background. The real killers become disease you can't see, and other humans. Somewhere in between those two eras, everything changed. Weapons made hominins dangerous instead of helpless. Group living meant more eyes watching the dark. Slowly, the leopard stopped being an existential threat and became just another animal in the landscape. So, the next time you picture a caveman being hunted, don't picture a roaring lion leaping out of the grass. Picture something quieter, a shape in a tree branch above the trail, patience watching, waiting for the exact right moment when nobody was looking up.